David, let's get straight on then with the Salman Rushdie story.
Yes, this is from Friday, broke just after we did the news on Friday. So we start here with the New York Times. They report on the attack. They say Salman Rushdie spent years in hiding after the leadership of Iran called for his death following the publication of the novel Satanic Verses. But in recent years, declaring, quote, "Oh, I have to live my life," end quote, he re-entered society, was appearing frequently around New York City without evident security. On Friday morning, an attacker rushed the stage at Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York, where Mr. Rushdie was scheduled to give a talk. The assailant stabbed Mr. Rushdie, who's 75, in the abdomen and neck, reported the New York Times at that point. Now, the attacker here is described by MSN. His name is Hadi Matar. He's been charged with attempted murder. He's 24 years old, born in California, and the state police said the motive for the stabbing was unclear. Preliminary law enforcement review of Matar's social media accounts shows he's sympathetic to Shia extremism and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps causes. So that gives some indication as to the likely motivation. And to pick up here, the story reported on by the Times on Sunday that Salman Rushdie has been left with life-changing injuries. And his son said that free speech is life itself, as he revealed his father suffered life-changing injuries. Zafar Rushdie, age 42, said his father remained in a critical condition after being stabbed on stage as he prepared to deliver a lecture. So this appears to be he's injured in the eye. It seems likely he will lose an eye. He's also had reports that nerves have been severed in his arm, and he's also been stabbed in the liver, and that's been damaged too. So it's extremely serious attack. It does seem that he's conscious. He's off the ventilator. He's able to talk. So there's a great deal of optimism that he will live, but clearly life-changing injuries is correct. Now, to give a little bit of background to this, many will know, but it's been going on many years. The New York Times here reports how Rushdie lived under an Iranian death sentence since 1989. Following the publication of the Satanic Verses, which fictionalized parts of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, with depictions that many Muslims found offensive. Ayatollah Khomeini, supreme leader of Iran after the 79 Iranian Revolution, issued a fatwa on February 14, 1989, ordering Muslims to kill Mr. Rushdie and putting a price on his head of several $1 million. And the New York Times continues here. Mr. Rushdie lived in London, immediately went into hiding. He had 24 hours protection from the British police, moving every 3 days, and then he lived in a fortified safe house for most of the next decade. The fatwa was maintained by Iran's government after the death of the Ayatollah, and for 10 years, when in 1998, the president, Katamani, who was considered relatively liberal, said Iran no longer supported the killing. Mr. Rushdie then began to make public appearances. The fatwa remains in place with a bounty attached from a semi-official Iranian religious foundation. And also on background information here, this is not the first attack, nor is it the first successful attack associated with the Satanic Verses. Here we see again from the New York Times. Rushdie attack recalls the 1991 killing of his Japanese translator. The translator, Hitoshi Igarashi, was stabbed to death age 44 at a university that I can't pronounce, northeast of Tokyo. No arrests have ever been made, and the crime remains unsolved. So this is a long history of extreme violence, and there was also as we'll come to, a further attempt on Salman Rushdie's life. whilst he was in Britain. And this has been responded to by obviously a great outpouring, particularly from authors, on the subject of free speech and on the subject of wishing Salman Rushdie well and wishing him, wishing that he survives and he makes a good recovery. One of the authors who was putting this idea forward of wishing Salman Rushdie well was J.K. Rowling. She said via a tweet, "Feeling very sick right now, let him be okay." And in response, she received a tweet, "Don't worry, you are next." Police are now investigating, Police Scotland are now investigating this tweet. It appears that it came from an account in Pakistan and has now been taken down. So this does show a very high degree of anger, and why it's directed against J.K. Rowling is not entirely clear. And when we come to the position of Iran in this, we've got Al Jazeera reporting here. And Iran says only Salman Rushdie and supporters are to blame for the attack. So Tehran is denied having any knowledge or link to the stabbing. But they've also said that they consider that no one except Rushdie and his supporters are deserving of blame or even condemnation for the attack. No one has the right to blame the Islamic Republic of Iran. And he also added that Rushdie had exposed himself to public indignation through insulting holy Islamic values and crossing the red line of 1.5 billion Muslims. State-run media at the IRNA said at least one other person tried to kill Rushdie following Khomeini's religious ruling, and that refers to a man called Mustafa Mazi, who died after a bomb he was priming from Rushdie prematurely exploded in London in 1989. He was the first martyr, said the Iranian official media, and they published an image of a shrine dedicated to him in Iran. So there's denial of any involvement coming from Iran, but a great deal of support for the act and a great deal of applause for the act. So their denial of any responsibility is hugely weakened by that response.
David, I just wanted to say that horrific as this attack is, I find it just fascinating that it occurs just at the point that Iran is absolutely in the crosswires of US, UK and NATO. And of course, Iran has just signed, as I understand, signed a deal with Russia to provide drones, which are going to be required on the battlefield in Ukraine. It is strange how these things happen around the same time, but a really bad incident.
Indeed. Any closing thoughts, David?
Well, we'll come back to more of this. There is both hypocrisy, and the Iranians were pointing out the hypocrisy on the part of the West, and that is correct. There's hypocrisy on the basis of free speech, but there's also a great deal of trouble within Islam, and there is a tendency not to want to talk about the problems within Islam within the West, and that's not good either. And we'll get to all of these subjects later in the news.